Hello, and welcome to International Institute of New England's virtual International Women's Day celebration. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Tiziana, host of WBUR's Radio Boston, and today we are celebrating the role of women immigrants and refugees in our economy and society. Later in the event, I look forward to bringing you a panel discussion with 3 women leaders in the region: Aoife Brennan, Sandhya S. and Julisa Salas. But there is much to do to celebrate immigrant women before then. So without further ado, please welcome Jeff Thielman, President and CEO of the International Institute of New England.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Thielman, and I'm the President and CEO of the International Institute of New England. Welcome to IINE's International Women's Day celebration. Today, we celebrate refugee and immigrant women who are helping to build a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive society. By joining us, you help highlight women's achievements in business, culture, and politics. International Women's Day allows us to honor the women who come to IINE from more than 100 countries to learn English, receive legal services, gain new skills, and find support as they navigate a new country and culture. I want to take this opportunity to extend my congratulations to our remarkable honorees, Aoife, Sandhya, and Julisa. Your stories embody the progress made towards achieving greater gender equality and diversity. Each of you is an inspiration to our clients and staff. My sincerest gratitude to our event host committee, speakers, film participants, and another powerful woman and our host today, Tiziana. A very special thanks to our keynote speaker, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, a daughter of Taiwanese immigrants and the first person of color and the first woman elected mayor of our city. I am inspired by the incredible staff at IINE who helped bring us together, and am grateful to our board of directors for your continued support of this important celebration. To the many devoted sponsors of this event, thank you for your unwavering commitment to IINE. And of course, thank you to all of our attendees tuning into our program. In the past year, IINE rapidly rebuilt our refugee resettlement program, added case management staff, and expanded our English for speakers of other languages and skills training programs. A major driver of our growth is a resurgence in refugee resettlement in the United States. In 2021, after President Biden raised the cap on the number of refugees who can enter the country to 125,000 people, we began preparing for more arrivals. The pace picked up dramatically after Afghanistan fell to the Taliban in August. Between October of 2021 and February of 2022, 4 short, intense months, IINE staff and volunteers welcomed 488 Afghans to Massachusetts and New Hampshire, including 202 children under the age of 18. For many Afghan families, it was the desire of a mother to secure a better education and opportunities for herself and her daughters that motivated the family as they boarded a plane in Kabul. The Afghan women in our services are very strong and brave, and we are privileged to help them restart their lives in the United States. Alongside people from Afghanistan, we are serving a growing number of Haitian migrants. We continue to serve victims of human trafficking, and this year our team will reunite more than 200 unaccompanied children with members of their families. As COVID-19 begins to recede, we remember that many of those who worked on the front lines during the pandemic were refugees and immigrants, including some enrolled in our services. We at IINE are unshakable in our commitment to extend welcome, offer relief, and generate opportunities for refugees and immigrants. As we celebrate the accomplishments of 2 immigrant women and a daughter of immigrants making their mark, we reflect today on the need to strive for greater gender equality. Thank you for being with us today and for supporting our work. It is now my privilege to introduce the next segment of our program, highlighting the impact our youth mentorship and certified nursing assistant programs have in helping immigrants achieve their potential. I hope you enjoy the rest of today's broadcast.
I first immigrated to the U.S. in 2006. I was 8 years old. I came because my parents were already in Alaska. We didn't have a status. My dad was being deported. My mom was trying to also fix her legal status, but then she decided to go with him and go back to El Salvador. Since I didn't have a guardian, I was adopted by my aunt and I was able to fix my status. I did drop out after my parents left. I started working when I was 14 because I didn't have a choice. I didn't have my parents, my siblings had moved away. I was gonna become a single mom, so I needed to go somewhere where I was gonna have a little bit more of a family support, like here in Lowell. I decided I wanted further education because I was tired of the kind of work I was doing, and I also want to give my son, the example that I want him to go to school. I got my GED at the Lowell Adult School. There I was introduced to the International Institute of New England, where I met a lot of people who helped me figure out what I wanted to do next.
The International Institute of New England's Youth Goal program provides a range of support services, including financial literacy, job readiness skills, and pathways to a credentialed program. Brenda joined the youth program in order to join our Certified Nursing Assistant training program.
They take the time to make sure that you are where you need to be and you're moving forward where you need to go.
Upon completion of the program and once she was certified, she came back and worked with Employment Services to obtain a job as a medical assistant at Lowell Community Health Center.
My end goal is to be working in a neonatal intensive care unit. As someone who had my son only for 2 weeks in the NICU, I have such a respect and love for all those nurses and all those people that work with those children. I want to be that helping hand to all those moms who have to have their babies in the NICU.
Brenda's a real go-getter. She doesn't back down from a challenge. She works hard. I really admire her self-motivation. Brenda is so caring and compassionate. I just know that she will be successful in a healthcare career.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jane Steinmetz, one of the co-chairs of the host committee for International Women's Day. It's great to be here. On behalf of the host committee, I want to thank all of you for joining us today to celebrate International Women's Day virtually, but hopefully for the last time virtually. To me, International Women's Day is an opportunity for everyone across the globe to take stock of the important role women play in society and celebrate our already vast and growing achievements. And today's celebration highlights the vital role of women refugees and immigrants in their families, communities, and the workforce. On this special day, IINE looks to you for support. Please take this opportunity to contribute to this incredible organization. Your donations will give refugee and immigrant women and their families access to mentorship, job training, and more as they begin their lives here in New England. On your screen, you will see a number to text to give. Please text IWD to 844-504-1726 or visit our website at iine.org/donate and make a donation today. Any amount makes a difference in the lives of thousands of refugees and immigrants who turn to IINE for support. Thank you. Now, I am proud to announce that Tripadvisor has been recognized with the 2022 Corporate Citizenship Award. The Corporate Citizenship Award recognizes Tripadvisor's progressive policies, community partnerships, ongoing investment in its employees, and its advancement of women within the corporation and beyond. Congratulations, Tripadvisor, and I'm happy to introduce Beth Grous, Chief People Officer, who will accept this award.
Hello, my name is Beth Grous, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the Chief People Officer at Tripadvisor, and I'm also a board member of the Tripadvisor Foundation. Our foundation has been committed to supporting displaced and vulnerable populations since 2015 donating over $10 million and forging close partnerships with global aid and resettlement agencies, including the International Institute of New England here in Massachusetts, where our headquarters is based. I am truly honored to accept the Corporate Citizen Award on behalf of Tripadvisor during today's International Women's Day celebration, and I thank IINE for this recognition. At Tripadvisor, we believe in championing the diverse identities, abilities, experiences, and voices of our employees and traveler community. This belief inspires us to think bigger, act more fearlessly, and strive to constantly improve. We have made equity, diversity, and inclusion a priority across our business, and we're making strides to represent and amplify diverse traveler perspectives through our content and by supporting these businesses on our platform with resources to become more inclusive themselves. For example, we've partnered with No More, an organization devoted to end sexual assault and domestic violence, and have created training modules for hospitality business owners and employees to help prevent harassment and assault within the industry. Internally, we are focused on the recruitment and retention of underrepresented talent at all levels of our organization, like increasing women in leadership and engineering roles. I am proud to share that globally, 48% of our workforce and 42% of our vice presidents are women. Beyond recruitment and retention, we support gender parity in our workplace by offering equitable, best-in-class benefits that include flexible work schedules, paid family leave, backup child and adult care, and a variety of other family, well-being, and mental health supports. Two areas I'm particularly proud of are our reimbursement of family benefits like adoption, surrogacy, and fertility, as well as the coverage we provide for gender transition-related care to support our employees in the process of transitioning. Our people play a leading role in the work that we do, both internally and externally. 40% of our employee resource groups are focused on the inclusion and advancement of women, like Women at Tripadvisor in the US and EMEA, Women Coders, and Women in Finance. These groups nurture the community of women in our workplace and partner with organizations like Wonderful to provide educational experiences for employees to connect with women entrepreneurs and leaders in the travel industry. They partner with teams across the business, often in consulting roles, on things such as content development for our platform and social media channels, and our diversity recruiting strategies, just to name a few. Our ERGs also unite around supporting causes they care most about. And in response to the crisis in Afghanistan last year, our Women at Trip ERG raised over $9,000 from our employees and matching funds to support impacted Afghan women and girls. We value and recognize the contributions our ERGs have on the community, our business, and our culture by providing compensation for our ERG leaders and encouraging ERG participation as a key component of working at Tripadvisor. I want to sincerely thank our ERGs and all of the teams across the company that power this important work. And to end on a personal note, I am the granddaughter of immigrants who fled war and persecution and who were welcomed by this country when they arrived at Ellis Island in search of a safer and better life. It is a result of their sacrifices that I sit here today. The work done by IINE to support immigrant families, not unlike my own, is very personal to me, which makes Tripadvisor's recognition today even more meaningful. And at the risk of stating the obvious, I am also a woman in a leadership role. Throughout my career, I have often been one of the only females at the table, and I have endeavored to make my voice heard and my contributions matter, while at the same time lifting and amplifying underrepresented voices around me. I profoundly believe in the importance of the work that IINE does to support immigrants, refugees, and the advancement of women from around the world. Thank you again on behalf of Tripadvisor for this honor, and happy International Women's Day.
And congratulations to Tripadvisor for this recognition of your contributions. Now to introduce you to the keynote speaker for this event, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. Mayor Wu became the city's first elected woman and first elected person of color to run the city last November. She and I engaged several times during the race, and in fact, she appears regularly with us on Radio Boston now. Mayor Wu is the daughter of immigrants, raised in Chicago, where at one point she also owned a tea shop. Wu eventually attended Harvard Law School. She studied under then professor and now U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren. She later went on to work for Warren's campaign and in City Hall under Boston Mayor Tom Menino. Wu was elected to the Boston City Council for the first time in 2013, and it was from that seat and building on advocacy on issues ranging from free transit to mental health and addiction support, she became the first challenger to then Boston Mayor Marty Walsh in the last election. She entered the race in September 2020. Mayor Wu lives in Roslindale with her spouse, 2 children, and mother. That home is now famously the site of daily protests from those angry at her COVID policies. And as a daughter of immigrants and a woman of color, I think it's worth noting that last month, more than a dozen Boston area elected leaders of color, ranging from Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley to Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins, signed a letter calling the level of protest she's experiencing racist and sexist. I'm sure she has much to say, so now, without further ado, we bring you Boston Mayor Michelle Wu.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you so much to the International Institute of New England for inviting me to celebrate with you today. IINE has championed immigrant and refugee communities for 104 years, and I'm honored to be here today to uplift and affirm your work right here in Boston, across our Commonwealth and beyond. So much of what you do reminds me of my upbringing, of my family. I grew up as the oldest daughter of immigrant parents from Taiwan who came to this country with nothing in their pockets, not speaking English. And as a child, I remember being pushed out in front of my parents from the time of 4 or 5 years old as their interpreter, filling in for them on the phone or helping them translate government forms. It's a familiar story for so many immigrant families, and it reflects the legacy of Boston, a city of refugees, immigrants, revolutionaries, who came together to build the diverse and vibrant community we are today. I'm grateful to stand with our Office for Immigrant Advancement, MOIA, in supporting the Work and Family Mobility Act, which would allow undocumented residents to apply for driver's licenses and connect them with opportunity and create safety across our entire communities. We've also worked together to support newly arrived immigrants from Haiti, a community with a rich history in Boston that IINE has served for many years. As you know, the fight for equity and access is far from over, but thanks to organizations like yours, we've made critical progress. This International Women's Day, let's reflect and celebrate just how far we've come, and let's reaffirm our commitment to go even further to uplift New England's refugee and immigrant women. I want to congratulate this year's honorees, Aoife Brennan, Sandhya Douglas, Julisa Salas, and I want to thank Tripadvisor, this year's recipient of the Corporate Citizenship Award, for all doing your part to build opportunities for all of our communities. Thank you truly for all that you do, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you, Mayor Wu, for your inspirational words. My name is Bopha Malone. I serve on the International Institute of New England's board, and I'm also an immigrant. I came to the United States as a refugee from Cambodia when I was very young. Today, during our International Women's Day celebration, you learned how IINE quickly rebuilt our refugee resettlement program, which is central to our mission and very important to me personally. Over the past several months, IINE has welcomed nearly 500 Afghan evacuees, and we expect to welcome another 200 refugees from around the world in the coming months. You also learn about IINE's amazing youth mentorship and job skills training programs, like the Certified Nursing Assistant program. The pandemic has deeply impacted immigrants in our community. Many were forced to leave their jobs to care for their children when schools were closed, and now they are providing extra support to their kids as they catch up on their studies. Others saw their jobs eliminated entirely as the hospitality and travel industries experience hard times. Thanks to the generous support from the New England donor community, IINE has been able to give direct assistance, provide case management, offer English and job skill training, and much more to nearly 4,000 refugee and immigrants this year alone. A successful International Women's Day event will make it possible for IINE to continue to offer and scale refugee resettlement, education, and training programs that allow refugees and immigrants to thrive. IINE relies on contributions from sponsors and individuals like you in order to offer robust programs that help refugees and immigrants settle in their new homes and to connect to services, learn English, get good jobs, and begin their lives here in New England. At the bottom of your screen, you will see a number where you can text to give a donation. Please text IWD to 844-504-1726 or visit our website at iine.org/donate. Your donation will help refugee and immigrants who need immediate and ongoing assistance. For example, your gift of $5,000 could provide critical resettlement services for a refugee family of 4 during their first few months in the US. Your gift of $1,000 could provide legal representation for a family of 4 seeking US citizenship. A donation of just $500 could provide an entire month of English language instruction. $100 could provide critical transportation for a month to a newly arrived refugee family. And just $50 can provide a warm meal and groceries for an immigrant family facing hard times. To make your donation, text the code IWD to 844-504-1726 or go to iine.org/donate. Thank you so much for your continued support of the International Institute of New England. Your generosity ensures that we can do the vital work that is needed in our community. And now, please welcome our MC and moderator of today's fascinating panel discussion, Tiziana Deering.
And now I'm really excited to bring you the panel conversation as part of our event today, and I'll begin by welcoming our panelists. Dr. Aoife Brennan is an experienced physician, scientist, and drug developer who has served as Synlogic's President and Chief Executive Officer since May 2018. A first-generation college graduate, Aoife was born in Kilkenny in the southeast of Ireland and moved to Boston for 1 year only 16 years ago. Sandhya S. Douglas leads a global team at Wellington Management as its Senior Managing Director, Partner, and Chief Operating Officer, Investments, and has been with the company since 2006. Sandhya was born in Chennai, India, lived there until she was 10 years old, and then lived in Singapore until age 18 before coming to college in the US in 1989. Julisa Salas, Chief of Staff at Toast, is responsible for driving Toast's operating system and working alongside the executive team to manage strategic initiatives. A Dominican American, Julisa was born and raised in Washington Heights, New York. Her parents emigrated from the Dominican Republic 34 years ago in search of the American dream. 3 different but strong women in different but substantial and impressive careers with different lived experiences who have so much to teach us. I'm looking forward to this short time that we have together. As you know, I asked each of you to just prepare a minute or two of an original question. We're going to go down the line, starting with you, Aoife, but we were chuckling before we started because here was the question, which I wrote beginning of the week last week. Is there something here in the Commonwealth right now, and if not, then elsewhere in the world, that sets your immigration experience in relief for you? Maybe it is something that reminds you of previous resilience or of previous vulnerability. What is it? And of course, over the last week, we've had just an incredible set of changes in the world, so it may be resonating differently with you today. I'll start with you, Aoife, if you could just give us a 1 or 2 minute answer to that.
Of course. You know, when you sent the email originally, I was reflecting on the COVID experience and how that's experienced differently when family are very far away. And for, I think, a lot of us, it's been a really important moment, right, and a really important time in history. But then, of course, over the last week and what's happening in the Ukraine, I've really been reflecting a lot on courage. And courage as a key attribute related to leadership, and the courage that so many immigrants have to display in order to, move, uproot family, find a new career, find a new home, and how important that is in our world today, and how precious it is, and how important it is to seek out leadership with leaders with true courage and true ability to demonstrate courageous decision making. And I think it's just so important and so close to what I've experienced myself and what I've seen in others who've gone through that kind of big seismic shift in terms of their lives, and moving from one culture to another, a setting where you're surrounded by family, friends, to setting up a whole new life and living and generating that whole new kind of ecosystem for yourself in a new place. And I've been reflecting a lot on that, and just the intersection of what's happening and what I've seen, and the immigrant piece, I think has just been, really important to reflect on, over the past week in particular. So that's been kind of my thinking and reflection.
Thank you, Aoife. Sandhya, I'll welcome you.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you said, when you'd first seen the question, that you started to think about the COVID world as the context, and that was my exact starting point. But in a couple of different ways that was going through my head. One is, as an immigrant, and I'd like to think of myself as a double immigrant, having gone from India to Singapore, Singapore to here, is the idea of staying put for 2 years with borders closed was a very uncomfortable place for me. Open borders was what allowed me to shape my life. And in a world where everything was closed, it felt very alienating. The other element of COVID, I would say, was watching the hate and the violence that was spewed against Asian Americans here, East Asian Americans, people of Chinese, Taiwanese, Korean origin. It really took me back to post 9/11 days, where I felt, as a South Asian, brown-skinned immigrant, I felt a lot of that, and I experienced a lot of that personally in public transportation through the city of Boston. So that, it was like that echoes and that sort of the trauma of that coming back. But like you, as things have really shifted in this past week, you think about the bigger world and the bigger picture. And we saw it happen with Syria when these major geopolitical events happen. There's these waves of immigrants and refugees, and we've just seen what's happened in Afghanistan. We're all, in our different communities, incorporating Afghani refugees that IINE has been really helping settle in our area. But the thing that it really makes me think about, I'm not sure that we're aware, and maybe we're underappreciating what the climate crisis is going to do on top of geopolitical crisis. And in the next decade or so, I think that we're likely to have a greater proportion of the world population moving than staying put. That's a very different world, where those of us who move have gone in small waves or individually into places that are big and staying put and receiving us. But when that balance shifts and more of us are moving in big waves and fewer of us are staying put, I wonder if we're ready for that world. And are we going to be arms wide open, or are we going to pull up the drawbridge? So a range of questions, a range of thoughts in my head.
Thank you, Sandhya. And Julisa.
Aoife and Sandhya, everything you said definitely resonated with me. And for me, as a daughter of immigrants, my parents came from the Dominican Republic 34 years ago, and they came in search of better economic opportunities, and they had to adapt to a new country, learn a new language, learn completely new skills to be able to work in this country and provide better economic opportunities for their children. And the one thing they always instilled in my brothers and I is always thinking through, number one, be grateful for the opportunities that you have and that this country is giving us, but also to think about who we were going to become, despite not understanding exactly what the path to get there would actually be. Mm-hmm. And I think as I think about everything that we're all going through, there's been extreme uncertainty. And I definitely thought about COVID. We're thinking about how the complex political environment that we're in today. And, you know, whether you're a company, a leader in a company, or you're an employee, or you're a consumer, or you're a mother or daughter, it's really thinking about who will you become in this moment. And it's not a very clear path to getting there, but being resilient, being gritty, and doing the best that you can with the cards that we've been dealt.
So I think it would be terrific to pick up on 3 themes that the 3 of you have laid out. And let's bat them around and talk about them a little bit. So let's talk about courage. Let's talk about movement, freedom, especially freedom of movement. And let's talk about adapting for your future and working our way through your experiences there. So I'll come back to you, Aoife, and just ask you, what is courage?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's the master virtue, and I've seen it play out so many times where I've worked with people who have, you know, maybe great integrity, but lack of backbone and lack of courage really prevents that, you know, integrity from being manifest. And I think it's not taking the easy path, but taking the right path. And I think it plays out in big, highly visible ways, like we're seeing right now in terms of people stepping up into leadership roles that were unexpected of them based on their background. But it also plays out every day in businesses, in offices, in families. You know, no matter what your background and your role is, an ability to stand and to act in line with your values when it's not easy. You know, if it's easy and your values align with the easy decision, then that doesn't really require courage, right? Where courage is required is where you have to make a difficult decision, where it hurts you, right? Where you're going to come out less well off economically, or you're going to not maybe look so great in the short term, but you're doing something that's in line with your values and your core values, and you're putting yourself at risk, you're doing something that's not difficult, and that to me is true courage. And I see it playing out, you know, day in, day out in small ways and big ways.
When is a moment it's happened for you where you had to show courage?
Oh, there have been multiple moments. And, you know, I've learned early on in my career that, you know, often when you see something playing out, you know, in a business, in a team, you know, where there's and often it's the person who's a really highly valued team member, who's the most productive member of the team, who has a critical skill and is behaving in a way that's not consistent with the values. And you have to take action. And that action can set the business back, it can set you back, it can damage your leadership, you know, kind of visibility. But it's important that you do that and that you're seen to act. And when I've seen that happen, one of my biggest learnings in terms of coming up through my career is that by the time you realize you need to do something, everyone else around you already knows. And they're watching, and they're seeing this potential kind of separation between what you say you value and how you're acting and what you're tolerating and what you're prepared to look the other way on. And that kind of, the wider that gap opens, the more your long-term ability to lead in that organization, that group, is damaged. And, you know, it's been kind of really illuminating to me to see how obvious these things often are to everyone around you. You're only realizing it maybe for the first time. This is not working out, I need to take action here. There's something happening that's not how I need it to be. But everyone else has already, you know, seen that, you know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it's kind of given me more wind in my sails to actually make those difficult decisions, having been through a couple of experiences like that and having that reinforcement of, you know, wow, actually it's difficult in the short term, but in the long term it pays dividends because everyone else around you sees that, you know, you had to do something that required courage and your leadership will grow in that moment. But, you know, it's something I've seen over again. And, you know, I think we see it playing out in small ways and big ways, right? Every day.
Sandhya, this really seems to be resonating.
It is, and it's so interesting because the 3 themes you noted, I think the second theme was movement, and I think the third you said was adapting to the world. Courage is required for movement. You can't move without courage. You know, you can be in stasis, you can be stuck. It takes courage to move, but courage requires vulnerability. It's embracing, making yourself vulnerable is what causes you to move, causes you to cross boundaries like us immigrants have done, and that takes courage. And, you know, you learn along the way. You think you're afraid, but you've already shown courage and vulnerability by taking the step and moving. And so to me, when I think about everything you just said, so much over the last 2 or 3 years have required so many of us, no matter the industry or the stage of life we're in, to display courage because we've just been forced to. But at the same time, I think I'm not sure that we as humans are doing enough to embrace our vulnerability. And unless and until we really embrace our vulnerability, we're not going to create an authentic and inclusive world. Vulnerability is a super strength that we all have in common. Some of us tap it, some of us don't, because we like to keep our protective shields on. And I think about my immigrant story. I had a cape on, I had this whole like superhero costume on for a long, long time. And I wanted to not stick out. I wanted to assimilate. And I wasn't courageous enough now that I think about it. I thought I was being courageous. I wanted to just mold right in. I didn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable around me, and I was very conscious of that. But what you realize is that there's parts of yourself you're editing out along the way, and it's not until you stop and say, hang on a second, that's taking a lot of energy that could be put to use elsewhere. And you start to have the courage to peel that stuff away, peel off the layers and really reach into your vulnerability and bring out more and more of your authentic self. That makes you a much more profoundly impactful human to the rest of you, whether it's your teammates or your family or the world around you. And it's this feedback loop between tapping into and opening up your vulnerability and then that leading to courage and risk-taking, I think is really important. And those things are required in order to adapt to the world around you.
Julisa, your face literally started to light up as Sandhya was talking. It feels like she was saying some things there that really resonated with you.
Yeah, absolutely. There were many things that you said that resonated with me. And I think the one that I really take away is, as you both mentioned, to have courage, you need to have a bias for thoughtful action. And I think one of the things that really resonated with me as you were speaking is that it's really hard, right? Because you don't always know what the consequences of courage are. And there's very limited data and information sometimes when you're taking a stand. But it's so important, as Aoife mentioned too, understanding what are your values? What are you going to stand for? What are the lines that you're not going to allow to cross? And when you see those being crossed, make sure there's a bias for thoughtful action, and knowing, even in spite of having very limited data and very limited information, understanding that whatever those consequences could be, because they could be, hopefully they will be great, but they could also be, they may not always be the best outcome, that you stood in your values and that you did the best that you could for the company that you were leading, for your family, or for the people around you. And I think for me, that's courage.
So as I listen to the three of you, I guess I find myself imagining that there were coming-of-age moments for you where some of these realizations really came home, where you began to transition to a different stage of womanhood and leadership and understanding of these values of being vulnerable, of displaying courage. And I wondered, are there any coming-of-age moments that come to mind for any of the three of you across these themes that we're talking about that you might share?
There's so many, right? I'm sure we're all sifting in our heads as to which ones to pick. The one that just popped first to my mind is when I graduated from college, you get, those of us who are here on a student visa, we get about 12 months of what they call a practical training visa. And that's the 12 months that you have to find a job with a company that will then sponsor you for a work visa. So that's your window. And at the time that I graduated in 1993, it was a different market environment. I went on hundreds of interviews, and they would go really well up until they realized they had to do a visa, and they wouldn't. So then it took almost until 10 months for one little bank that no longer exists in New England to offer me a job, and it was just a crappy job, but I hopped on it, and they would sponsor, but they wanted me to pay for it. I had no money, and I had all these college loans. And I took out a credit card, my first credit card, in order to draw the whole thing out to pay the lawyer fees. Within 2 months, I realized what a toxic environment I was in. And it was hashtag Me Too did not exist. So I didn't have a term for it, but that was the environment that I found myself in. And I had a decision to make. Do I keep my head down and soldier through it, because it took so much effort to get that one little job, to get my foothold? And if I walk, what then? I have to go back home with my tail between my legs and no way to really make this American dream come true. And but at the same time, to your point about you have to know what you stand for, you have to know your values and where you draw the line, you said. And that really resonated with me. And I decided that I needed to draw the line. And so I resigned, and I had to look again. And I had to go through that whole process again. And I found another job, and this one was a much better environment through actually an old college friend, but I had to go through that whole cycle, take out another credit card, take out more loans to pay for the visa. But that was a coming of age moment for me, because you're all of 22 and you are here to catch that American dream, and time's running out, money's running out, but at the same time, what compromises are you willing to make? And I realized that there was a line and I couldn't cross, and that's the first time I understood how much corporate culture mattered. No one talked about that in college or anywhere else, this idea of culture and how important culture is and an alignment of values are to have you or anyone else be able to thrive. That was a really important lesson for me. And so culture has been the single most important thing to me since then in choosing my places of employment. That comes first above everything else.
Go ahead. Yeah, that's, it's so funny when you mentioned the visa thing, because I think anyone who wasn't born in this country, even to this day, I go up to that counter in the airport and my heart beat. I'm like, Aoife, you have a U.S. passport. It's not a big.
But there's PTSD,
there's
right?
There's PTSD from that. Being in those. Your story really resonates. I came here on a student visa to study for an educational opportunity, and that element of, okay, what's next? I can't take any risks career-wise. I have to kind of batten down the hatches, be the good employee, not rock the boat. Someone's going to notice. Me, I have to make sure that I'm kind of hidden and that I'm, defined by my work ethic, my ability to tolerate, my ability to go above and beyond. And it takes a long time before, you can leave that behind and realize, hey, I've actually accumulated some power here. I can maybe step forward. I can get outside my comfort zone. I can raise an objection if I experience, bias, or if I think a decision isn't being made in the best interests of the business, or I see something that's not consistent with my values. But for a long time, there's a tremendous amount of fear that I think, even after, you become official, you're a citizen, it's still there's this tail effect. And I think, a lot of what you said just so resonates with me, of being able to kind of step up, and that courage.
All those humiliating moments while you're waiting in line to get your visa renewed.
Yes.
And the way you get treated.
Yes, and if I open my mouth, people will hear my Irish accent. They'll realize I'm not supposed to be in this boardroom, in this, position of power, in this position of influence. And I think you lose a little bit of your voice in that moment, and it takes a number of experiences of, stepping out, role models of others who've been able to have, amazing influence, coming from kind of a similar background, to flush that away. And so you can really realize, okay, now I can take risks, I can step forward, I can put myself in, positions, I can raise an objection if I see something that's not quite right happening. But, it does stay with you. I think there's a long shadow that's cast by that kind of early immigrant experience.
Yeah. Julisa, what about you?
I definitely empathize with the experience of being, being a daughter of immigrants, just having your head down and just working as hard as you can, and focused on just yourself and making sure that that you're doing the best that you can for yourself and your family. And I remember there was a point very early on in my career, I was working in finance, and I was doing private wealth management, and
I just realized that there were so many things that we learned in terms of the stock market, saving, just basic budgeting, financial literacy skills that I realized I was just like, I wish, you know, before I went to college, I wish I'd known all of these skills, and I wish somebody had taught me that, and that wasn't something that was part of our curriculum, you know, at the time. And I was talking with a few of my peers back then, and we all said, like, this would have been something that would have been really helpful as we think about our young adult life and how we think about budgeting and saving and the stock market. And there are just many things that, coming from an immigrant household, there were just things that, you know, were never really explained to me. And I remember we all got together and actually decided that we would teach inner city students, and we went to high schools to teach them about financial literacy, and it was, you know, basic financial literacy skills. But it was the first time, I think, that together we realized that we actually had a duty to people beyond just ourselves, and that we had to pay it forward in whatever way that we could, and that we could take action. Because at that time, there wasn't a program or structure coming to high schools and teaching students what they could know about going to college, or how to save for college, or how to think about, you know, loans and things like that. And that was something that, it could be small, but it was something that we could do, and it was an action that we could take.
What is your calling to, or your duty to people outside of yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, it's, I feel a very deep sense of purpose, and it's not, I don't know if it's a particular calling for one thing, but it's a very deep sense of purpose of, I've had amazing structures, amazing mentors and people, and an amazing environment to become who I am today. And for me, my calling and my sense of purpose is, how do I pay it forward in any way possible? How do I get involved in the Boston community or in my Dominican community so that they can kind of understand the pathways that they can take so that they can become the best version of themselves. And that's how I think about my calling and my purpose.
And let me just stay with you for one more minute and ask you, one of those mentors, call someone out.
Ann Hansen has been an incredible mentor for me. So we both went to Middlebury
Hansen.
College. Yes,
Yeah.
Dean Hansen.
Yeah.
So we both went to Middlebury College. And she was actually, I went there through the Posse Foundation. She was our Posse mentor, and she has been an incredible person who kind of, you know, showed not just me, but the rest of the group. We went together as a group of 10 to Middlebury from New York City, that we could achieve whatever we set our sights to. So she's been an incredible mentor since I was very young, and still today.
Sandhya, you had a number of thoughts to pick up on there. Go for it.
That's so interesting, because I would have said Ann Hansen was one of the most important people in my life in college, and I went to college decades before you did. But
same school though.
Same school, Middlebury College. But I was thinking about what you said, and what you said. You were talking about it takes many reps before you realize you have the power, right? And so at some point you realize you never think you've earned your seat at the table. I still struggle with that. Do I belong? Do they really want me at this table? At some point, you realize that the longer you question that and you don't own that whole space, you're not being detrimental to yourself. You're being detrimental to those who are coming in behind you. And so this need to create a different environment, the need to create a different, open, and more equitable space than the one that I occupied 20 years ago, 15 years ago, is what motivates me. And so you have to use your voice, you have to use your seat at the table. And I think there's so many things I wish when I was in my 20s in this financial services industry, someone would have pulled me aside and given me a real talking to and told me and said, look, you don't have to, just show up as yourself. You're spending way too much time editing who you are. And that's taking away from you being the best that you can be in this environment. It is going to hold you back. It will derail you if you don't let go of those things. I wish somebody had pulled me aside and told me that. It took me many years into the middle of my career when it started to sort of flatten out for me to really do some soul searching and figure out how to do that. And so I find for me what I love doing is spending time with, you know, the next generation that's coming up, especially those from diverse, underrepresented backgrounds, whether it's women, immigrants, people of color, LGBTQ, because we need to, the more that people are not bringing we use this term authentic self all the time to work, the more they're going to be detrimental to their own movement, let alone the movement of everyone around them. And so I'm fiercely passionate about that. That's really important. And then in a bigger way, like I look back at, I could never have afforded a Middlebury experience were it not for those that went before me and decided to create an endowment and help people like me get aid. And so you think about how do you impact that? How do you pay that forward? And all of that, it moves me. So I guess if I were to answer the same question as what is my calling, it would be my calling to me has become very clear in the last few years is equity and inclusion.
Yeah, I think just building on that, I had this kind of aha moment maybe about 2 or 3 years ago where in biotech, it's a interesting industry because if you look overall, about 50% of our companies are made up of women, but yet there's this huge drop-off in terms of leadership and board roles that's become very visible over the last couple of years. And I realized as a female leader in biotech, I was frequently doing panels, just like this one, giving advice to women of how to navigate this system. And at one point, I was sitting on one of these panels, and I was like, Aoife, you sound ridiculous. Talking about the questions were always about how to manage work-life balance and how did you navigate your role. And I realized, wow, I'm spending all my time telling women how to navigate a system that's completely biased against them, right? So if I spent that time fixing the structural issues, some of the core things that are really, holding women back, and our goal should be for a mediocre woman to have the same opportunity as a mediocre man, right? Not like, how do I become the 5% of women that actually make it to a public company board role, but how do we change the system to make it easier for those individuals to kind of grow and build their career. So I've moved away from talking about how to manage your work life and saying silly things like you need to delegate childcare and realizing, wow, we don't have a great childcare infrastructure in this state. Like maybe I should be spending time trying to fix that particular problem, not advising women about how to find a suite of help to help them get to work and focus on their career. So that's been kind of an aha moment for me, and it's really changed my focus from, telling women how to change and how to fit in and how to moderate their style so that they are accepted in kind of positions of power, boardrooms, like your kind of self-editing piece, and instead saying, hey, how can we change the system here so that we recognize that leadership comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes? And how do we change the things that are holding women back, particularly at that mid-career level? And that's what we see, right? That often it gets to kind of this director and then there's this ceiling where women are not moving forward. And how do we change that for the next generation so that women and other outsiders are not paying this tax? It's like an additional tax that you're paying, whether it's changing how you appear that's not authentic to you yourself, or whether it's dealing with infrastructure issues or other kind of workplaces that have been set up for a specific 1950s style workforce that really just doesn't exist in 2022. And that's been kind of how my focus has pivoted over the last 5 or 10 years.
So we've got about 4 minutes left. And my son over the weekend was binge watching the Harry Potter movies again. So I'm going to give you each a wand. And I'm going to give you 30 seconds or so. And you're each going to wave that wand and either grace something, grant something, or fix something for the people who are listening. And so, Julisa, here is your wand. Go.
I would love to address diversity and inclusion, and in our workplaces and also in our own peer groups and the people that we surround ourselves with, because I think it actually enhances the solutions that we come up with, whether it's in our companies, in our own communities, and in our own peer groups.
Sandhya, your wand.
My wand. I think what Aoife said really exactly is the point, is how do we change the system? So the wand that I'd want to use is to change a mindset that underlies the system. The mindset of that it's a zero-sum game and we're all clawing for our little piece of the same sized pie. And so I'd want to wave that wand and change everyone's mindset to say it's actually a positive-sum game. And the more of us that the system accounts for, allows in, and allows to thrive, the bigger the pie for all of us. So that would be my wanting.
And Aoife, your wand?
High quality, affordable, flexible childcare for every child in Massachusetts. It gets to the heart of the diversity issue. It gets to the heart of the immigrant experience because you're moving away from your family and your broader ecosystem that is kind of the unofficial childcare infrastructure for working parents a lot of times. I think it gets to this next generation, a multi-generational impact where kids born today have great opportunities, and there's so much data supporting the impact of early childcare experience, and not just that generation, but the subsequent generations, right? So I think it's kind of the win-win-win, and that's how I would use my wish.
All right, and we have just a touch of time left, so I get to ask one more lightning round bonus question. One thing you learned from each other. Sandhya, one thing you learned.
Wow, it's hard to pick one. I think the one thing I learned is we're so different. We're so different that we're here to represent some form of the immigrant experience. I know this, I've always known this, immigrant experiences are not homogenous, but this right here is proof. We're very different, and yet what moves us, what values unite us are so powerfully common. So I really appreciated kind of having that reinforcement one more time.
And that's Sandhya Douglas. Aoife Brennan, lightning round, one thing you learned.
I think one of the things I really took away from your comments is, I'm going to be questioning myself about, am I still editing? Am I actually being vulnerable enough, going forward? I think that's been my big takeaway from this panel, which I think I thank you for, because it's a great reminder that, no matter how much we feel that we've accomplished, there's still an opportunity to continue to grow.
That's Aoife Brennan and Julisa Salas.
I think what I took away from both of you is actually how do we continue to push ourselves to be our most authentic self? Because when you're your most authentic self, you actually do a better job in service of your values. You open up roads for others, and you allow others, you give the others permission to become their best self. So thank you for for encouraging me to be my best authentic self going forward as well.
And thanks to the three of you. That was a wonderful panel.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
What an amazing discussion. Thank you to all our remarkable honorees, Aoife, Sandhya, and Julisa, our host committee, speakers, film participants, our host today, Tiziana Deering, and Mayor Michelle Wu for being our keynote speaker. And thank you to all of you who support the International Institute of New England. You make it possible for us to help more than 4,000 refugees and immigrants each year. We look forward to seeing you next year in person on March 8th. Have a great day.